Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So today we're here to do an episode of Favorites, which is a show that I put on every Wednesday, except for last week when I messed up. However, last week's was a 25. This one is going to be my five. It's a 5 album thing. So these are 5 more albums that grew on me with time. Each of them had its little bit of problems, some of them big problems that I didn't overcome for periods of time before it grew on me. And to be honest with you, that's exactly what happened. These albums grew on me because I didn't like them instantly. Some of them I didn't like at all. And then a couple of them I gave extra chances, and finally something clicked. But it took a while for every one of them. Maybe one of them, maybe not so much as the other ones, but definitely they all took time to get on. So the first one we're going to talk about is one that people have known that I like quite a bit, which is this one, Gentle Giants, Acquiring the Taste. I think that's upside down, isn't it? Nope, it isn't. It's just I don't have my glasses on, so I can't really see. Yeah, so this album, which is kind of a strange cover, as we've been talked about before, it's supposed to be like this. You're supposed to be licking an apple. But clearly that is not the impression you get when you see this. But anyways, we won't get into that. So this album, I thought was really strange when I first heard it. I'd already had issues with 3 Friends, which I'd had for years, and I still haven't really overcome that one yet. But this one, I kind of thought, well, this is just more of the same. But I started listening to people talking about it, specifically from Sea of Tranquility, talking about the album, and I started saying, well, they like it, and they all have really good ears for music, so maybe I need to listen to it again. And I did, and I put it on the playlist, and I would play it when its turn came up, and would be doing things. And then one day I just started liking some aspects of it. There was a couple tunes. Wreck was the first one, and Black Cat. Both those songs I started liking. Then pretty soon, Pantagruel's Naivety, Edge of Twilight, The House, The Street, The Room, all these songs started having this impact on me. And the next thing I knew, this was becoming one of my favorite albums. But it was on the playlist for a good 5 months before I started liking it. And then it stayed on the playlist for almost another 5 months or 6 months, maybe even close to a year. And that whole time I was really liking this a lot. So this one came from a fairly distant part in my imagination to almost forefront in my life. Became my favorite album for a while. So the point to that is that sometimes you may not like something initially, but especially in the prog universe or in the prog community or in prog music in general, sometimes it takes longer to absorb these things. I tend to be one of the people that takes longer than most people to get into stuff. But this is a fantastic album. I highly recommend it. The next one up, I had a bit of a specific problem with this one. I had an album by this band that I like quite a bit, and this didn't sound like it. I don't know if you've had that experience where you're listening to an album that you really like, and so you say, I'm going to get another album by this band. You go out and you get the other album, and it's not the same, and you're disappointed. And that's why I felt with this one. Blue Oyster Cult's Secret Treaties. At first, it wasn't the same as Fire of Unknown Origin, and if you've heard both albums, you know that they don't really sound much alike. But after I started, because again, this one came highly recommended. Lots of people that I admire, I thought, had a like for this album, so I kept giving it a chance. I decided the best way to deal with it is to put it in the playlist, and that's what I did. And the next thing I know, I'm actually loving everything on this album. It didn't take long either, maybe not as long as some of these ones to grow on me, maybe less than a month, and I'm loving everything on this. And not only do I love the songs that came on this originally, there are some bonus tracks, Borman, The Chauffeur, Mummy, both those, Career of Evil, the single version, both those three songs I really like a lot as well. Astronomy is a fantastic tune. Dominance and Submission and Subhuman and Career of Evil, all fantastic. There are really no bad tracks on this album, and in fact it's come to a point now where given a choice, I think this is probably my favorite Blue Oyster Cult album. From way down at the bottom, it came right up and just took over. So yeah, maybe not as severe a change of attitude as some of these other ones, but definitely took a bit of getting used to. But now I love it. I think it's probably one of my favorite albums as well right now. Next one up, this one had a couple of issues as well. First of all, I had no experience with these guys before, and I found this album kind of wanting at first, and plus I'd paid like $28 for it and wasn't too pleased about that for an album that I didn't like. But again, the cover was fantastic. I paid $28 for the album. This is Androgynous, Amorphous Androgynous, sorry. This came on the recommendations of the professor of Prague, and so I got it based on that. I even actually ordered it through Laser CD. I didn't really like, no, actually I didn't order it through Laser CD. I got it at Encore. They happened to have a copy of it. I paid the price for it and was disappointed, and it sat on the shelf for a while. And then once I started doing the playlist, I said, you know what, I paid $28 for this thing, I'm going to like it. And that was the kind of mindset that I had, and I started playing it all the time. It was in my playlist, played regular. Plus this has Peter Hamill on it, and I've never been a fan of his, so it had some negatives against it, and but it overcame them, and this is actually really good. It's one of the best $28 albums I've ever bought. I like it a lot. Maybe not as much as the previous two I've already discussed here, but I still like it a lot. I think it's a great album. I'm going to go over here and see if I can get a better shot of it. There it is. Just such a wonderful cover. All 6 tracks on here are really good. I even don't mind Peter Hamill's voice because they used it in a way that suits it, and so it came out really good. So Amorphous. So this is Amorphous, Androgynous, and Peter Hamill, and the album is called Persuade Ourselves We're Immortal. Fantastic. The next album took 40 years for me to like. The first time I heard it, I hated it. My friend brought it over. If it would have been my CD, it would have been off the 16th floor of the balcony. But it wasn't my CD, so I had to stomach it. And I said, don't bring that thing back here again. I can't stand these guys. They sound cheap. They sound amateur. Their music is terrible. I never want to hear them again. Oh, sorry. The guy's moving some stuff, and he's got that old tractor going. So we got to put up with that. Anyways, and so I never wanted to hear this again. The Doors debut. There was a couple of tracks on here that, of course, I knew. Break On Through, Light My Fire, and those were 2 of the big songs that I knew of, but I didn't like either of them. I didn't like the sound of the keyboards. It sounds kind of Bon Teppy-ish. The music wasn't really sophisticated. I didn't even really like the vocalist much. But 40 years later, one day I got the whole set, the whole Doors collection at a yard sale one day for like $1 or something. All 4 of them. Well, all 5 of them. There was one I was missing, which I went later and bought. But I figured, well, okay, we'll start at the beginning. We put it in the CD player, and I thought, this is such crap. And then I put it back on the playlist, and I did that several times. And then one day, slowly, I didn't dislike it as much. Something happened. I think it was the Alabama song, the Whiskey Bar. I started liking that tune. And then before I know it, I was liking this album a lot. So I overcame my distaste for this band through this album, and now I like them quite a bit. I've got all 6 of the CDs. I've been trying to work my way from the beginning to the end, but I accidentally put the wrong one in and had it on my playlist for a while before I realized it. So anyways, excellent album. I like it a lot. If you're a Doors fan, you already know what I'm talking about. And if you're not a Doors fan, just keep in mind they do take a while to acquire a taste for. Some people may never acquire a taste. It took me 40 years, so if you're older, 40 years might not be within your realm. And the last album is a Pink Floyd album, which isn't really unusual for me to have a problem with Pink Floyd. I initially had problems with Pink Floyd for the first 20, 25 years that I listened to them, and I've since outgrown that. But when I first heard this album, I thought, is this even rock? I said to myself. Funny, like, why do I want to look at the rear end of a cow? I didn't get it, especially when he's looking at me. It's kind of, I don't know, it's weird. Anyways, the album, I listened to it, I thought, this is just nonsense, and it's not even rock music. And I was a little disappointed. Well, a lot disappointed. I'm thinking, oh, Christ, another. Pink Floyd seems to have really great albums or really shitty ones. That was my opinion. But because I've been doing this channel, when I got this, I realized by listening to many other people that sometimes the album isn't what you think until you've listened to it several times. So I was playing this every day for several times, and then I put it in my playlist, which seems to be the way I overcome things now. And within a month, 2 months, I started liking some aspects of it. And even though I still don't think it's really high on the list of rock, like I don't think it's a rock album in the purest sense of it, it definitely is a Pink Floyd album and has a lot of interesting sounds and stuff. Some people don't like it. I get that, but I'm not one of them anymore. I like this album a lot. It's become amongst my favorite Floyd albums, and I wouldn't have said that when I first got it for sure. So those are the 5 albums that grew on me with time, and it seems that my playlist has been a big manufacturer of that. So that's why I continue to have it, and I continue to put albums in there that I don't necessarily like, although lately I've all the stuff that's been in my playlist I'm actually in love with. But and I think that it's getting more and more difficult for me to dismiss an album and never listen to it again. I've gotten to a point where, you know, even the Kansas stuff, which I've never really big warmer on any of the Kansas stuff, I will sometimes replay again because that may grow. I mean, ELP is another band like that. These are 2 bands. The reason I bring up these 2 bands is because they're 2 bands that, based on my history and what I like and don't like, they should be amongst bands that I like, but they're not. And so I think it's just a matter of time. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Prog Monster. If you have, please hit the like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell above so that you get notified. If you've got any comments about the albums that I've talked about, or any albums that you feel are kind of that same way with you, then put them down below. Because the thing I like is when I talk about stuff like this, it shows that I've changed and I'm open to listening to stuff that I normally wouldn't. And people will give me stuff that they had the same problem with. And I said, oh, you know what? Maybe I got to try the same thing on that album as I did on this. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We will see you next Wednesday for another episode of Favorites. So have yourself a good night. Take care.